Welcome back everyone to another One Piece theory video. Today I'm your host Malik, and today we'll be breaking down the latest One Piece theory that has been scratching my brain for the last few weeks. Is Dracula Mihawk a member of the Nerona family? That's right, the same family that Saint Emu Nerona is a member of. Let's break it down. Alright, before we begin, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe right here on the channel. It really helps me out. I'm a small new channel. My goal is to hit 50 subscribers by the end of June, so any help goes a long way. I appreciate it, but let's get into it. Okay, so listen, if you're like me, you've seen the One Piece agenda memes, you've seen the tropes, trailers, people just making fun of Mihawk, you've seen the Black Blade, how he paints it, you see how this man is basically has no feats, and how he's basically been on fraud watch basically the entire series, and how his only real dubs are basically slicing up Zoro pre-time skip. And you've basically seen him fight Vista briefly at Marineford, and you just don't see the guy do anything all that interesting. You're just like, okay, he's there. He's heavily influenced by things like actual Count Dracula in Romanian mythology. And so that kind of gets me thinking like, okay, Dracula Mihawk. All right, what is he? Who is he and what's he really all about? All right, and so that got me thinking more about it. And then a couple chapters ago in Imu's fight with Loki, he basically turned himself into a giant and basically stabbed Loki with his omen flames with a sword that looks exactly like Mihawk's. And so that got my brain thinking like, okay, is there a connection? Is there some kind of connection between Emu and Dracula Mihawk, who's we know very little about? As far as I remember, we don't even know what sea he was born in, whether he was born in one of the Four Blues or the Grand Line. We know next to nothing about his past, all right? We know, as far as we can tell, 24 years ago, he was present at Roger's execution at Logtown. We know he was known as the Marine Hunter, which is a nice little foil to him and Zoro, who was known as the Pirate Hunter. So there was something that they both had something. We can trace a little bit of his life, but that's about it. We don't know when he became a warlord. We don't know what his first bounty was. We just don't know. In fact, we don't know what Mihawk's first bounty was when he was a pirate. People like Doflamingo, Ball Hancock, we knew what their bounties were before they got reactivated. Mihawk, we don't know what his bounty was. All right. And so today I'm going to break down these essentially origins and etymology of his name, and then basically try to figure out, okay, is what things we can link to Emu, okay? And the Nerona family in general, because the Nerona family is one of the 20 families that created the world government, okay? Emu is not the only member there. There are probably other members in that family as well. See the Don Quixote family. We have Doflamingo, his brother Rocinante, his dad, and then on the other side, you have people like R.I.P. Miosgard. You were a real one, man. Sorry, man. You got lynched up for no reason at all, just for defending some fish people, man. I'm sorry, my dude. But then we segue into the next part. So let's break this down, okay? His name, Dracula Mihawk. Okay, so in case you didn't already know, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Mihawk is inspired by Count Dracula. Okay, who was Count Dracula inspired by? Okay, Count Dracula was inspired by a man named Vlad III, aka Vlad Dracul, or Vlad the Impaler. Okay, he was basically the leader of what is Wallachia, i.e. modern-day Romania. And Vlad Dracul, or Vlad the Impaler, essentially was the son of a man named Vlad II, or Vlad Dracul. And he was a member of the Order of the Dragon. And his order basically existed as a way to stop the encroaching influence of the Ottoman Empire. So they were members of this order named the Dragon. All right. And so this kind of gets me thinking like, okay, so was he's named after Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracul. Okay. Vlad Dracula. And so that got me thinking, like, okay, so his name, Vlad Dracul. So he's clearly referencing that, okay? And something about Vlad II, okay, Vlad III, actually. Vlad II had lost basically a battle against the Ottoman Empire and effectively had to give his sons, Vlad III, Vlad the Impaler, and his younger son, Radu, as guests to the Ottoman Empire, when in reality they were hostages, they were guests, they were noble blood, they were treated well, they were educated in Turkish and Ottoman court and tactics, but they were effectively hostages in all but name, if we're really being honest, to ensure their father's good behavior. When Vlad II died and his son Vlad the Impaler took over, he basically showed up and not only executed all the boyars or nobles who undermined his father, he pretty much went in against revolt against the Ottoman Empire, and he was famous for basically taking a bunch of Ottoman soldiers, sniping them out, and just inserting their carcasses via rectum through the mouth all the way, and just leaving their bodies littering a forest field of men who've been impaled to death. All right, and that's how he got his nickname. All right, and so that got me thinking, okay, Dracula, what does that mean? Well, the word Dracula means dragon, but it also has in Romanian, but it also has another meaning in Latin. It can also mean the devil. And what is Emu? The devil. Okay, he is the devil, man. Okay, listen, Emu is clearly the devil. We can debate whether Emu is somebody like who had noble intentions and ended up this way after 800 years. We can debate that for another time. But Emu is almost certainly the devil. I mean, he literally has the devil's fruit. Okay. And so he essentially is his name, Dracula, could just mean son of the devil. Now, I'm not claiming Mihawk is Emu's son. I'm not doing that. Emu's 800 years old. I don't think he has any descendants that matter of the story. I think there's other members of the Nerona family out there. And so, that got me thinking like, okay, so is Mihawk a member of the Nerona family? Okay. Because we've seen other members of the Celestial Dragons leave. Okay. Most of them voluntarily. We saw people like, obviously, Doflamingo's father, Don Quixote Homing, he had come to the realization that him and the other Celestial Dragons were not different from other humans, that they were the same, that they were all human in the eyes of the seas, right? And he decided to take his kids, Doflamingo and Rocinante, and they went into the quote-unquote lower realm. And listen, Homing, nice man, horribly naive. He did not understand any context to what was happening at all. All right, he basically went down there and thought, "Oh, I'm going to just renounce my Celestial Dragon status, and nothing bad will happen to me." He and his family get repeatedly lynched to the point where his wife dies of a preventable disease, and he gets murdered by his own son, Doflamingo. Okay, and that basically traumatizes Doflamingo to the point where I'm almost certain he loses an eye as a result, and that's why you see him wear the shades 24/7, because he just does not look like he's up for this. And so we see Don Quixote, Doflamingo, we see what he becomes, and we see what happens to Rocinante and everything. But that's one example. Another one that I think is probably most appropriate is Shanks. Shanks was a Celestial Dragon, albeit briefly. He was a member of the Gods Knights. Shanks was the son of Garling and his brother Shamrock. They both were supposed to be taken back to Marie-Joie, but Shamrock was taken, Shanks wasn't, and Shamrock was raised as to become a member of the Gods Knights via his father Garling. And when Shanks, seemingly after his fight with Blackbeard, because we see him go to the Holy Land, he's got the eye patch over his eye, and Garling is like so overreached. "Oh my God, my poor baby boy, you're here. You're here. I'm so happy that you're here, Shanks. Oh my God, you've suffered for so long. Whatever you want, son, I'll give it to you. Whatever you want, it's within your reach. All right, forget all those people in the lower realm. They're trash. They're garbage. Ignore them. They're garbage. Ignore them, son. They don't matter at all. But I want to help you, my child." And so Garling was clearly happy his son was around. He dated both his kids, and he would become a member of the Gods Knights. Everything was looking good for Garling, and Shanks rightfully, never bought into the Celestial Dragon's garbage. He was like, "This is crap. We're no better than everybody else. We're all human in the eyes of the seas." And Shanks basically finds out about the Great One. He's like, "Wait, the Great One?" And then he learns about the covenant system, the shallow seas, deep sea, and abyssal sea covenant that Emu has. And then he wisely decides, yeah, no, I'm going to pass on this one. I'm out. Deuces. Shanks leaves, and he doesn't come back. So Mihawk, we obviously know, had an epic rivalry with Shanks that was amazing, that was witnessed by Whitebeard apparently. And we see this fight go on, and Whitebeard had recalled it. He's like, if people had seen that fight the way I saw it, it would have been talking about it to the end of time. Now listen, Mihawk, agenda piece aside, is the only one with a black blade. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's something to do with the fact that he never fights anybody seriously. I don't know how he got a black blade, but he got one. Okay, and so Mihawk is regarded as the world's greatest swordsman, and so we see, all right, essentially Mihawk with two other people who are Celestial Dragons. Okay, and during the lead up into the Marineford War, we see all the warlords gather at the table, and then at the opposite ends we see Mihawk and Doflamingo. Okay, which I think is a nice little parallel because Mihawk and Doflamingo are kind of like two opposite ends of what Celestial Dragons did. Doflamingo constantly craves and yearns for his status, and Mihawk just didn't give a shit apparently. Now, how is he a member of the Nerona family? Could he have left? Okay. Or could he have been born to a member of the Nerona family, kind of like what happened with Ginny, where she was born to a celestial dragon, but she basically got kicked out. She was never accepted to begin with. And by side note, Ginny may or may not be a member of the Fickerland family, because you see Ginny's Rule 63 form, you see Bonnie's Rule 63 form by Oda. She looks exactly like Shanks and Shamrock and Garling, so she may be Shamrock or Garling's kid biologically. I don't know, but we're not talking about that now. Mihawk, okay? So was Mihawk somebody who left the Marie Joie system when he saw, okay, even though he would have been a kid, because there was pictures of him as a child, he would have been like, yeah, I'm out, screw this, I'm done, I quit. He leaves. Or was he born and raised in the lower realm like Shanks, and then found out that he was a member of Celestial Dragons, and then left shortly after? When he learned about the whole covenant system and the Great One, and did he leave? Where he was like, well, you're telling me there's a guy basically known as the Great One, and he'll basically make me sign a contract where I exchange my soul and autonomy in exchange for power, but I'm totally subservient for the rest of my life. And Mihawk wisely was like, I'm not being no ass slicker. I'm going to go. Deuces. He bows out. And so Mihawk decides, okay, is he gonna be part of the system? He's like, no, I don't want this. So Mihawk could have left the Celestial Dragon Hoyland. He could have been like, I'm out. It could have been 2 years before Shanks, because Mihawk is 2 years older than Shanks. So he could have been a few years. He could have been like a few years before he met Shanks, fought, and then seemingly left. So we don't know when that happens. We don't even know when his duel with Shanks happened. We know Whitebeard witnessed it, but that's about it. All right, and we do know Shanks he didn't get the scar from Mihawk, because Shanks said it himself. I wasn't scarred by Mihawk. I wasn't careless. So we can piece together that timeline. So now that I've talked about his name and kind of like the etymology of it, and the kind of history that may have been associated with it, what are things that lead us to believe that Mihawk is Celestial Dragons? Okay, outside of the big ass sword that Imu basically just pulled out that looks exactly like his during his fight with Loki, the only other instances I can think of are involving Imu's name, Nerona, and the eyes. Okay, Mihawk has a very specifically drawn colored eyes, and with the red eyes and the ring pattern, we only see one other person have those set of eyes. Imu, that's it. We only see the Devil Man have those set of eyes. Okay, we only see one person in the entire series have eyes like that. And so that got me thinking, like, okay, is there somebody else I'm missing? Like, is there somebody who has this power that we don't know about? Somebody who does exist, who is the Devil Man? And we only know, we only know a member of the Nerona family. That's Imu. We know that there are multiple members of the same family. We know both Saturn, Summers, and Shepard, Jupiter are from the Shepard family. But we don't know about that. Maybe it's an eye thing with the Nerona family. Their eyes turn red. Mihawk essentially basically travels the whole world in a coffin, essentially, and he's always very lethargic, very lazy-paced, kind of like how Imu sits his entire time in the flower room, doesn't do anything, plays with his butterflies, and just looks at pictures of Lily while he gets lube and whacks off to her. I don't know what Imu does in his Gunner cave. Okay, I don't know what Imu does in the Gunner cave. I don't know. I don't want to know what he does in his Gunner cave from there, okay? Then kind of another one instance I get into is like his name, all right? Nerona, okay? It has the kanji for God or divine in it, okay? And so that got me thinking, like, okay, what else can we refer to this? Okay, the name Dracul also has meaning dragon. So Mihawk may also have been a member of essentially the different family that Imu was a part of. Again, I'm just yapping here at this point. But when it comes down to it, Mihawk being a member of the Nerona family via Imu kind of makes sense to me a little bit, because it would be a great foil for him, Shanks, basically both members of the Celestial Dragon nobility, both left after saying, yeah, I don't want any part of this, all right? And both basically looked at it, and maybe Mihawk saw in Shanks somebody who could relate to on a personal level and be like, oh, you're from the Fickerland family. Okay, he might have seen somebody that he could relate to. Or, if you're like me, it could have just been a trash-talking fest where Shanks is like, oh, the Fickerland family's way better than the Nerona family. And Mihawk's like, oh, catch this fate here, Black Blade, bitch. And so maybe that's what happened. I don't know, okay? But when it comes down to Mihawk being a member of the Nerona family, we basically have the idea that, okay, so his name, Dracul, means dragon. It can also mean the devil, depending on what language you're using. You have the fact that him and Emu are the only ones who have the same red-colored outer eyes. And when Emu glares, and so does Mihawk, the design looks very similar. All right. I don't think Mihawk is Emu's child. Is it possible it is from the Nerona family? Yeah, it would be nice. All right. Because lately in One Piece, bloodlines are becoming a lot more important. We have Rocks and Teach's bloodline in the Davy family. We have Shanks being a member of the Figureland family that was set up in film Red. So maybe is Mihawk's member of the Nerona family. All right. Maybe he is a member of that clan. He decided, I'm out. Pieces. I don't want any part of this. All right. He found about the Covenant system and he left. All right. We don't know. We know he was at Roger's execution 24 years ago. All right. We don't know much about his life beyond that. And so that got me thinking, like, okay, was he something like what happened with, let's say, I mentioned Shanks and how he was raised up. I doubt he was raised, I remember, as a member of the aristocracy, because we see a picture of him as a kid, and he doesn't look like he's wearing the classic Celestial Dragon outfit in the bubble. No, he's basically wearing, raggedy clothes, and he's training with a katana and a sword. So Mihawk more than likely was basically born in the lower realm, and maybe would have gone up to the Marigeois when he was like in his teens, but then he would have been like, he maybe could have just, after a few years there, and just basically were like, you know what, this is bullshit, I'm out. And or maybe he found about the Covenant system, and he's like, yeah, this is basically an evil cult with the devil, so I'm out. And maybe he took the name Dracul as a way to basically kind of like say, I'm Dracul, son of the dragon, son of celestial dragons, or son of the devil. And so that kind of got me thinking, like, okay, what other things can we say about him? All right. Well, listen, beyond Emu's sword, which we only see 2 people in the entire series use that kind of weapon, all right, that kind of like cross. Mihawk's sword is named Yoru, Knight. All right. And so, that's just got me thinking, like, okay, so how many people use that type of sword? Because Mihawk is a very unique set of designs. We've seen people use cutlasses, rapiers, katanas. We just haven't seen anybody use that kind of like big cross-guard sword. We just don't see that. So is that something that is shared in the Nerona family? Is it a special trait that members of the Nerona family have where they use that kind of weapon, where they're trained in it? I don't know. Listen, Emu is not even human anymore at this point. He's basically the devil man that exists in One Piece, and we just see what he can do with his omen powers and how he can enter covenants with people. And he's over 800 years old, at least. He's about to be at least 900. I wouldn't be surprised if he's much older. And so that got me thinking, like, okay, so Emu is probably the biggest person in the Nerona family. He may or may not have eaten the devil's fruit's power. He had the devil's fruit power. And he essentially, basically, he brought his whole clan with him. And I don't think maybe he took on the form of those of Lunarians and wiped them all out. All right, maybe. We don't know we know King is the only Lunarian in the story that we know of. But from what we guess, all Lunarians are died out. Maybe Emu took on that form because Lunarians had such overwhelming power. And they just went from there. Again, we don't know much about this, but I'm going to say Mihawk probably was somebody who was born in the lower realm, grew up, found out that he was Celestial Dragon's descendant or something, and then he was brought into the fold to be trained as a member of the Gods Knights, then decided, you know what, I'm out. And then he found about the whole Covenant system and the cruelty, and it's like, this is wrong for me. Goes out to sea, becomes the marine hunter, and then basically just spends the next a few years basically marking full out, becoming a warlord, and that's it. Because Mihawk, amongst pirates, has the highest active bounty outside of Yonko, okay? Because Shanks has a higher bounty, so does Blackbeard. But amongst the non-Yonko characters, okay, even Luffy's got a higher bounty than Luffy. His bounty is much higher than any of them, all right? And so Mihawk being a Celestial Dragon descendants via the Nerona family, because it would be nice to see it, because so far we've only seen a couple members of each family, and so getting more members would be great. All right, so anyway, I'm Malik. That's the end of my yellow yap chest here. All right, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I hope you have a wonderful day.